Nobody in my family bow hunted, and the idea of hunting was throwing on a red jumpsuit, going to sit underneath the tree and waiting for deer to walk by you while you ate salami and cheese. The podcast, so that's just, I've been doing that for a long time as well. I did it before it was like the popular thing to do, to be honest. I look for what I call the room. And once they've entered that room, that's it, they're mine. Nowadays, there's so much stigma out there about using guides. It drives me freaking insane. Anybody who's starting out in hunting, or even who's been hunting for a long time, I think if you spend a lot of time learning behavior, you're going to be more successful. You know, there was always a big debate about trophy hunter, meat hunter, and I always told people, I'm like, you know, my biggest thing is I'm out there for the experience. I'm an experience hunter. Cover, feed, and water. All animals need those things. And if you can find those, you know, with juxtaposition to where you can glass from, those are the key. Hi, this is John Stallone of the Interviews with the Hunting Masters podcast, and you're listening to Living Country in the City, episode number 45.
Y'all ready for your dose of flyover state spirit? Straight from the concrete jungle? Well, put down your latte and pull on your boots. It's time for Living Country in the City.
Hey y'all, welcome to episode 45 of Living Country in the City. You know, I'm getting really amped up for my Arizona Coues and Muley hunts, and I want to make sure I'm getting as much good information as possible. So I figured I'd reach out to another super knowledgeable guy about hunting Coues and Muley out in Arizona, one of the masters himself, or at least the guy who interviews him, John Stallone of Interviews with the Hunting Masters. You see what I did there? Interviewing the I'll stop now. Anyway, John, thanks so much for hopping on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me, man. Always interested in doing podcasts that are, you know, educational based. I like helping people, and it's always a fun time for me to, you know, shoot the shit, so to speak, about hunting. So any chance I get to do it, I'm all about it.
Yeah, it's never a problem to get hunters to talk about hunting, it seems like, as long as they're not out doing it.
For sure.
So I always like to start out, why don't you give a little bit of background, maybe about yourself, how you got your start in the outdoors and hunting?
Well, as far as getting started in hunting itself, I came from a hunting family. So my dad hunted, my uncles hunted, my grandparents hunted. Pretty much all my cousins, all my family hunts. And I started really, really, really young. My first time in the field with my dad was probably about 5 years old. And I go back and forth because I don't know exactly. I'm pretty sure it was that very first hunt. My dad doesn't seem to remember. So we say it was that first hunt. But we went out in the field and we were hunting whitetail in upstate New York. And my dad let me hold a gun with him when he shot a buck. And that was my first deer, my first hunting experience. Almost scarred me for life because I was so small and my dad was shooting a lever action 35 maul and it kicked like a mule, especially for a kid. You know, I mean, he was holding it mostly, but it's still. So like the gun, not the death of the animal or anything like that. That had nothing to do with it, but the actual firing of the gun. And really still, I don't really love shooting anymore. I never really did actually, but yeah, so I think that's why I like the bow so much. It's quiet, not as explosive. So yeah, that's how I got started in hunting. You know, that being said, nobody in my family bow hunted, and the idea of hunting was throwing on a red jumpsuit, going to sit underneath the tree and waiting for deer to walk by you while you ate salami and cheese. So I didn't get a whole lot. I got a lot of education in woodsmanship as a child, but as far as like hunting tactics, not so much. Although my dad was a fairly successful hunter. He had a knack for choosing spots, but he didn't know why he knew what he did. So it wasn't until I was in my early teens and I picked up bow hunting because a cousin of mine was interested in compound bows, not so much to go hunting, but we started screwing around with compound bows in the backyard. And, you know, I don't know, I had a bear whitetail or something like that was the first compound that I had. And I had already been shooting archery equipment. My dad bought me a fiberglass longbow, and then he bought a recurve bow that I was never able to pull back until now. I actually still have it because it was 50 pounds, and I was 13 years old, and a 50-pound recurve is pretty tough to pull back. So, but I was always infatuated with the bow. I remember when my dad bought that recurve, it actually came with 24 cedar shaft, with feather flexion arrows and these giant broadheads on them. And man, I was just like infatuated. I used to just stare at them, look at them all the time. And I would actually shoot those out of my 30-pound, longbow that my dad had and that gave me that I shot all the time. And I used to take those arrows and I used to put them on slingshots, and we'd go shoot rabbits with them and stuff, but I was just like infatuated with the whole bow and arrow thing. So then when I finally got the opportunity to start shooting, I was strong enough to pull a compound bow back. And so I started hunting, and I did it pretty much till I got to high school. Then I started chasing two-legged deer around a little bit too much. So going hunting for big game wasn't as, I used to go bird hunting a lot and do that. It's a lot of small game in high school. And then right after high school, when I went into college, I started, I had moved here to Arizona. So I really got into bow hunting again and Western hunting at that point. But every year I'd go back to New York. I started hunting in the Midwest. I started doing a lot of whitetail hunting because that was like the sexiest thing going around. That's what was on TV. Everybody's talking about these big giant bucks. And I still hadn't figured out the whole spot and stalk thing, as a teenager. And then it wasn't until I was in my, later 20s when I started really learning how to do the spot and stalk game. And I shot my first Coues buck, and, the rest is history. As far as the industry is concerned, I think I've been, in some shape, way, or form, I've been getting paid to hunt since 2001, basically. So it started off as a field staffer and pro staffer type situation, way back in early 2000, 2001, 2002. I started the hunting channel online 2004, started my TV show late 2004, almost 2005. So I've been filming my hunts and doing that stuff now for the better part of 13, 14 years.
So tell us a little bit about the podcast. How long have you been doing the podcast?
The podcast, so I've been doing that for a long time as well. I did it before it was like the popular thing to do, to be honest. So the hunting channel online, part of the membership was having the, access to my podcast. So it was only for the members, and I would do one a month. And I did that for about 6 years or so. And then I just got, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it wasn't doing anything for me. And the hunting channel wasn't doing quite as well for a while because of, YouTube and Vimeo and all this other free content that was coming out. So I kind of just, I abandoned it, and I focused a lot on my TV show because that became bigger than the hunting channel, and it was certainly bigger than the podcast was. So I focused a lot on my filming and doing, doing the TV show and putting together short films here and there. And then it's going to be 2 years now ago, I got talked into bringing it back to the masses. So I brought the podcast back as a standalone thing now. And I've actually didn't do my TV show. This is the first year in 14 years that I didn't do my TV show this year. So I kind of stepped away from that for a little bit, mainly because I had a son. He's 19 months now. So a little over a year ago. So I was kind of like, just chilling back this year, trying not to do as many hunts.
Definitely. So what would you say is kind of the description? Give a little, for those who aren't as familiar with it, give like a description of your podcast, kind of what it's centered around, the kind of people you like to talk to.
Well, it's an educational based podcast. I try to keep it real informal, meaning the conversation goes wherever it goes, but I always have an agenda. I always have a direction. I want to be able to give my listeners the answers to the questions that they have. I actually have an Ask the Pro section on my website where people, listeners will go in and they'll submit questions. They'll submit people, that they want to hear from, so on and so forth. And I try to give them that. I try to answer those questions. I'm always getting bombarded. My wife tells me, like, if I had $5, I should charge $5 for every time somebody asks me a question, because she sees me typing away on my phone. And she's like, what are you doing now? I'm like, well, this guy's asking me about this and that and whatever. And she's like, you give away so much free information. I'm like, you should start a Dear Abby of hunting or something, But no, but I enjoy it, because I wish there was people. I mean, there has been through the years, helped me out, tons of people. But I wish way back when I was trying to figure things out, and I was doing a lot of figuring out on my own, that a lot of this stuff that's available today was available then, because my learning curve would have been a lot less steep, And I really, the actual podcast itself, as far as a content standpoint, it's anything big game, anything hunting, really. I'll even talk about small game, but we haven't done much of that. And I'll even talk a little bit about fishing here and there, but I would say it's 80% Western big game, and I do about 20% on whitetail.
Okay.
That's my roots, was whitetail hunting, even though I've been a Western game hunter longer than I've been an actual whitetail hunter. And, 90+% of my hunts are all Western hunts and spot and stalk public land hunts. But I still have a real love for the chess game of whitetail hunting and stand hunting and stuff like that. So I try to do at least 1 hunt to 2 hunts a year, still in the Midwest or back east.
That's awesome. And, I love your whole attitude, that you're always giving out info and stuff. I don't have a ton of experience or knowledge, but, I've gotten the honor to be able to talk to a lot of really successful people, really knowledgeable people. And, I enjoy sharing whatever I can regurgitate from that. And just, I've had so many people, respond when I reach out, that I try and make myself available as much as possible. And, I've kind of told myself that I'm going to do my best to respond every time that somebody asks me a question. I may not get back to them for a week, but, I'm bound and determined to get back to everyone who reaches out. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fortunately, my following's just a little bit smaller for now, so I'm not quite as swamped.
Be careful what you wish for.
It's it amazes me. I just recently passed 2,000 folks on Instagram, and then I've been watching the podcast numbers grow, and it just amazes me that many people have any interest in anything I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the benefit of getting to share what much wiser people have to say.
Well, it's funny to bring that up, actually, because right when you started talking, you made me think of I don't know if it's a mantra or not really a mantra, but an adage that I kind of live my life, listening to other people, even people who are not as experienced as I am, I always feel that I can learn something. And my dad told me, and this was in Italian, he told me, as a child that, and it translates well in English, and I've heard it in English this way too, but it's a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from other people's mistakes. So listening to other people and really soaking in that knowledge, it gets you from point A to point B a lot faster. And there's something to be said about having your own experiences and being able to draw from your own experience. But there's been many times in my hunting where I've been faced with a situation and been able to draw on somebody else's experience to come up with a decision that, eventually helped me score a deer or whatever. And I think that's important.
And I recently released a podcast about my Idaho elk hunt. I went out this September, my first hunt, backcountry hunt. It was I don't want to call it a complete disaster, but it was about as close to a complete disaster as it could have gotten. And it was just, it was just the perfect storm of crap. And, but, I went through and, I sat down and I released a podcast and, not necessarily to glorify in the dumb stuff I did or whatever you want to call it, but really just to be like, hey, these were the decisions I made. This is why I made them. This is why my thinking may have been correct in this situation. This is why it may not have worked out. These are the things I did. These are the, I wanted people to learn from that. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from that. Just in, I've had a couple of buddies message me, listeners, followers, and I've had several of them say, hey, I really appreciate that podcast. After listening to that, I re-examined all the stuff that I'm carrying on my trip, and I've gotten rid of a bunch of it that, I've shaved a bunch of weight, or I've planned on packing some extra stuff that I'm just going to leave in the car for emergencies or this or that. And that really made it feel like this whole disaster was worth it.
Oh, that's cool.
And I mean, I learned more probably from that trip than I, would have learned from 3 or 4 or 10 super successful elk hunt trips, where I go out the first day if I was and see a bull or, just happen to see a bull and take one or whatever. So I'm definitely a lot stronger for it. And I'm hoping that a lot more people have learned from my mistakes, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was your first backcountry hunt?
Yeah.
You chose elk hunting.
I chose a solo.
I want to know who your mentor is that told you to choose elk hunting as your first backcountry hunt. It's like the worst one to do, especially as a newbie.
I did a solo DIY, just over-the-counter unit archery elk hunt in Idaho as, my first backcountry hunt. Nobody told me to do it. It was more just, I was presented all the options, and basically it came down to, that sounded like the coolest thing I have ever heard of in my life. I'm like, the second I really learned about elk and the calling and the country you have to go, I mean, I just was immediately hooked and thought, like, there's nothing else in this world that can sway me away from wanting to do this. Like,
yeah, elk hunting's the most romantic thing out there, I think, really. I mean, I do love deer hunting, but I think I don't even elk hunt that much because you don't have the opportunity to elk hunt quite as much because it's such a short season, really. But I think if somebody told me you had to pick one species to hunt for the rest of your life, what would it be? It'd probably be elk. There's something about elk hunting, and the more I do it, the more I want to do it. I don't know. It's weird because I don't know. I guess it depends when you ask me because I'm one of these guys that I get excited about everything. I don't specialize in any one thing. I love whitetail. I love mule deer. I love antelope hunting. I love ibex hunting. I love deer hunting. I like anything, if it's got 4 legs and horns on it, I love to chase it.
It's pretty much, well, what's your favorite animal to hunt? Well, what's my next hunt?
Exactly. What's in season?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, no, that's me. And I'd be honest with you, I love predator hunting too. I'd love to shoot coyotes. So I'm, so yeah.
Well, the cool thing about that is you can pretty much do it year round. Like depending on where you're at, that's just something, you can, it's a nice buffer between various seasons as well. Stuff like predators and pig and all of that. I feel like it's a good way to just basically continue your season in between the big landmarks.
I mean, I always used it as a tool to hone my skills, and I bow hunt for predators. I call them and shoot them with the bow. That in itself has given me more tools to kill big game than anything else that I've ever done as far as practice or anything to improve my skill set was hunting predators in the off season.
What would you say about that? What really what were those skills that you developed through doing that? What was the lessons you learned?
obviously you're spending a lot of time in the field, so you're looking for coyote sign, and in the process you're finding deer tracks, you're finding, sign of other animals. You're learning how to use wind. I mean, wind is huge. You know how the wind, how it moves across the landscape, because your setups for calling are very dependent on, while bow hunting them, especially if they're coming with a rifle, you see them coming from a distance. If you want to, you can whack them 500-600 yards, and the wind's not as big a factor. But when you're trying to get them within 30, 40, 50 yards max, I would say on it, bow hunting them, you really have to choose your setup perfectly. I learned so much about calling other animals, like elk calling now. Like, I look for what I call the room, or the kill zone. I look for a spot that I know an animal has to come into to see whatever animal's making that sound. And once they've entered that room, that's it, they're mine. And then, there's the marksmanship part of it too. When a coyote comes running in and he's flying in, and he literally stops for 1 second to stare into the bush where that call's at, you got to draw back, acquire, and shoot. And it's that quick. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, all that stuff is priceless. I mean, for instance, my ibex hunt, it's like a drive-by shooting. You gotten like a split second to decide if that's the animal you're going to shoot, draw back, acquire target, let it fly. Simple as that. And you don't want to just be willy-nilly, slinging wood in the air, flinging carbon, and you're just going to be planting little carbon trees all over the place. You get very, very, very good at it. And I'm at the point right now that if a coyote comes, I don't call them in every single time. That's calling is a whole different art form, and picking the right spot and so on and so forth. But if I call one in right now, I'm like 75% success rate of killing them. So if they come within bow range, 75% of the time I'm killing them. So
nice.
And it's just, yeah. I tell people all the time, you want to become a better hunter, you just got to hunt more. So how do you do that? You got to hunt year round. And what can you hunt year round? Coyotes, bobcats, fox, mountain lions.
Well, unless you're in California, then you just get to watch them eat the people's dogs in Hollywood Hills.
Good old Communist Republic of California.
Man, it'll always be home, but God help me. You were saying when we were talking before that you actually do come out to California occasionally, though.
I do. It's kind of been my first stop on it's like the first stop on the tour every year. In July, I come out and hunt A-zone for blacktail, and I have so many friends now that I've made that are like, oh, you got to come to B-zone, you got to come hunt the back, the Shastas and this and that, and you got to come, there's so much better hunting than A-zone. Like, A-zone's the worst. And now, because I failed, I hate freaking failing. Like, I'm one of these guys that, like, I don't kill a lot of big shit. I don't. I mean, I got my fair share of some nice trophies, but in relationship to as many animals as I killed, my trophy section is very, very small compared to the overall number. But I'm one of those guys that I hate not filling a tag. I will be trophy hunter. If it's a 5-day hunt, 4 days, I'll be a trophy hunter. But day 5, if it makes me happy, I'm shooting. That's how I am. So, I have a lot of medium because of it. But anyway, but I had not been able to get it done in California. Something always just blows up on me. Like, well, last year I only went on two stalks. So I was there for 7 days. I went on 2 stalks. I could not find a good buck to save my life. We were hunting different areas. I was hunting right on the coast. The weather wasn't right. The moon was full. It was just not good hunting. Got poison oak too, which was awesome. Yeah, but other than that, other than last year, all the years prior, I've been on gigantic bucks, just finding awesome deer, having stalk after stalk after stalk, getting into about 100 yards, and then the opportunity never presented itself. I ran out of cover. I actually didn't get busted very much at all. Like, I think the year prior, I didn't get busted. I got busted the very last morning because I was just pushing it because I wanted to make it happen so bad. But I can't tell you how many times I got within 120, 110 yards, and I'm like, I'm out of cover. Now I just got to sit here and wait, and hopefully this guy's going to feed in my direction. And I'd be there for 2 hours, and he feeds a different direction. So, yeah, California's got my number. But because it's got my number, I got a bone to pick with it. And until I do, I'm not going to try any of the other units. I'm not going to deviate from where I've been hunting. I've been trying to hunt. I've been doing most of my hunting in like Mendocino County area, and I can't let it beat me. That's like the thing. Like I hate losing. So
you are just preaching to the choir on that one, man. Like, I don't know. I'm definitely would say I'm kind of the same mindset to where I'm not, and who knows, as I get more experience hunting, this may change, but I'm definitely fully of the mindset of, first half, 3/4 of the trip, I'll be looking for something somewhat specific, and that last little bit, the second I feel the time pressure coming on, I think I liked how you put it. If it makes me happy, it's going down. So
yeah. And I was that way for my whole life. I didn't even actually do the whole trophy thing up until a couple of years ago. I was always about what? If I'm out there, I see something that makes me happy. If I got an opportunity, I'm going to take it. But, matter of fact, I did a whole special thing on it because, there was always a big debate about trophy hunter, meat hunter. And I always told people, I'm like, my biggest thing is I'm out there for the experience. I'm an experienced hunter. I don't need meat to feed my family. I mean, I make a good living. I go to a store and buy meat if I had to. My kids and I are the only people that eat. My wife won't eat, but she doesn't really love game meat. So, it's like, so that part of it's not even. And as far as me, I'll be lying to you if I didn't if I told you I didn't like holding a nice rack in my hand like the next guy. But I found out long ago that if you're out there just for, inches or, holding bone in your hand, you're going to be more disappointed than not. And you got to be out there and enjoy everything. Once I started enjoying everything, hunting became very easy for me.
Well, I think as you go out and you start to enjoy it more, you put a lot less pressure on yourself as a hunter. You probably you slow down a bit, you make wiser decisions, and as a result, you become more successful. Like the more relaxed, the more fun you have, I think the more successful you become.
Yeah. I didn't say anything about me going slow or making wise decisions. If you think that about me, I'll take it.
Well, at least that's where my mind was headed. So,
no, man, I push the crap out of everything. If I was more patient and I did go slower, I'd have a lot more animals to find room for. So it's probably a good thing I don't, actually.
Yeah, there you go. That back wall would be a little more covered.
Oh, that back wall is usually covered, actually. I just took everything down and painted white in here. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. I always have a hard time hearing myself say this because I feel like I'm bragging, but I've shot probably 150, 160 animals with my bow and another 50 or so with the rifle.
Nice.
Big game animals. That's not including coyotes. If I included coyotes, probably closer to another 100 or so with the bow. Yeah, I just,
Man.
like I said, I got a lot of small stuff, a lot of medium-sized stuff. They're not giants, but I don't like losing tags. And as a result, I've had a very, very high success rate over the years. But like I said, as a result, I have a lot of medium-sized to smaller. I'm trying to get out of that. I'm trying to get out of that mindset. Just because, really, logistically, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with another 120-inch buck on the wall? What are you going to do with, deer number 7 for the season? Where are you going to put it in the freezer? It just doesn't. I sound really douchey of me, I guess. You have to edit that out because I don't know. But it's the truth.
Though,
it's the truth.
And this is coming from a guy that has no heads on the wall, has never so much as touched a shed, let alone held a rack in his hands. It has, I think, some frozen ground beef and I think a very old corned beef in the freezer right now.
Sounds delicious.
It's actually really good. I might need to thaw that out. Coming from my perspective, like I understand where you're coming from. I'm not. It doesn't come off as douchey. It's and it also just maybe, like I said, because I understand that whole I just hate losing. I saved my Idaho tags, and I tacked them up on the wall, so I have to stare at them every time I pass by.
Man.
It's just
you're like me, man. I keep a pile of all the tags that I've not filled over the years, and I call it. It's basically my motivation. So I just every once in a while I thumb through it. I'm like, you son of a. And I think back, and it's just it's a reminder. Those are my trophies. Those are the ones that like they got away from me, and they stick with me. So those are my memory trophies right there.
Well, a lot of those will probably stick with you more than, like you said, the seventh deer of the season kind of a thing. It's just like that's just another one. Okay, you give some of the meat to the neighbors and throw the rest in the freezer, and that hunt's. Unless something crazy happened on it, that hunt's kind of done and gone. But then that one hunt where, things just kept going wrong, that's going to stick with you forever. And hopefully, something you learn from. But
yeah, no, for sure.
So speaking of trying to redeem oneself after a rough hunt, the benefit of this being my podcast is I get to be super selfish and ask all the stuff that's going to help me out on my upcoming hunts. And
fire away.
We talked a little bit about I'm planning on coming down to Arizona come December and January. Want to chase some Coues deer and want to chase some muleys during the rut. And hopefully, just get out there as many times as I can. Thought we'd talk a little bit about that. See if
sure.
I know you're being down in Arizona. You've probably done your fair share of chasing the Coues deer.
I have. It's probably my favorite thing to hunt in Arizona.
So why is that?
Because they kick your ass and they get underneath your skin. They're super elusive. Deer in general are a tough adversary. And I love mule deer. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing sexier than a big muley rack. Running mule deer, especially, I love them. But Coues deer, they're like, it's an adventure hunt. You get to experience some of those things that you would do on a sheep hunt or like I don't want to say mountain goat because you're not really that high in elevation wise, but they occupy terrain that's rough. They occupy dense, thick stuff to, open sparse stuff, there's always something, I don't know, and they're super skittish. Like there really are the most skittish animal out there. The only thing that I've ever seen that's worse than them is ibex, literally. And I don't know. They're just cool, man. They're super cool. I can't explain it. I never really tried to verbalize it. I think that's the first time anybody's ever asked me why I like them so much, but they're just really cool. I like their racks. They're different than a regular whitetail. They always, not always, but a lot of times they're more boxy and angled as opposed to round, round and smooth. They're like more bladed, so to speak. Like their racks are always kind of more unique. You find a lot more bucks that are, a non-typical rack versus a typical rack. They always have little stickers and, little thorny points sticking out, just like the cactus they live in.
Always those little fun things, the little extras that kind of make them unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's cool. So what tips would you have for someone coming into Arizona the first time, maybe only ever been to Havasu, and coming in looking to chase Coues deer?
Well, I would say know your strengths first. If you're a very good glasser, I would definitely do the southern units, where you can utilize your ability to glass. You want to use a tripod. I recommend, really honestly, no less than 15. Some guys will tell you 10s or 12s are sufficient, but I've never really liked glassing with that little bit of power for Coues. Definitely tripod, 100%. But tips and tactics wise, if you're hunting in December and you're hunting in January, you're looking for rutting bucks. If you're coming to scout, you're going to look for the big populations of does, because that's where the bucks are going to be come December and January. It depends, man. There's so much. This is the thing about Coues deer. They will be where mule deer are, in the rollers and stuff like that. So you can get up on high points and glass down into rolling country below you, or you can be down low and look up high into ridges and stuff like that. The biggest key to hunting Coues deer, I think, is looking for areas that you can glass effectively and that have cover, feed, and water. Those are all animals need those things. And if you can find those, with juxtaposition to where you can glass from, those are the key spots. I think in hunting in general, anybody who's starting out in hunting, or even who's been hunting for a long time, but doesn't seem to have the same success, I think if you spend a lot of time learning behavior about the animal or the species that you're after, you're going to be more successful, because you'll be able to think about what they do and how they do it, and then you start applying it to the landscape. That's kind of been my biggest thing. Like I'm always been a student of whatever I'm doing, and to be a student of their behavior and learn how, why, when, and what they do always gives you more answers to the questions you have when you're out in the field. Helps you make smarter decisions. Instead of saying, okay, there's a buck up there. He's in the open right now. The sun hasn't hit him yet. I think I'm just going to run up there. But had you listened to what I just said, you already learned a couple of pieces of the puzzle. You have a lot of information in that one sentence. He's up on his feet. He's feeding in the open. The sun hasn't hit him yet. The sun's going to come out. He might stay in the sun for a little while, but eventually he's going to get out of the sun. He's going to bed in a shady spot. Well, this all depends on weather too, but every situation is different, but there are things that you don't know that you already know about a situation. Like you don't realize that buck is already telling you a story. He's already giving you pieces of the puzzle if you understand how deer act and move, what their behavior is. So that's the key, I think, is learning those things. And you and I don't have enough time on this podcast to teach everybody that, but there's tons of information out there. You mentioned Jay Scott earlier. He's got a lot of good podcasts on that. myself, actually, I'm going to be releasing here, not next week, but the following week, I'm going to be releasing like 4 or 5 Coues deer, archery Coues deer specific podcasts before the season comes up. So we're going to do Coues Week again. I just did a light introduction of Coues Week for the early rifle season hunts, and we did a few on there. There's a couple on there that are really good. The guys that I have on really understand. They're real students of those bucks, and learn and kill big giant bucks every year because they know how they use the landscape.
That's awesome. I'll make sure definitely to pull those up. I think those will come out just before this episode does. So I'll make sure to link to all those on our show notes page. That'll be livingcountryinthecity.com/45.
Oh, appreciate it.
But yeah, I'll definitely link to those. I will definitely be listening to them.
Yeah.
So how would you say, because the seasons, those late season archery hunts in Arizona, they're for deer. You buy a tag for deer, not specifically for Coues or for muleys. A lot of the time they're found in similar places, but how would you say,
especially during the rut?
Yeah, how would you say their behavior differs? Or even like, how would you say hunting tactics would have to differ for the two different types of deer?
Well, one of the biggest things that sticks out to me is that mule deer are definitely more nomadic. It's not uncommon for a white-tailed buck to go 4 or 5 miles during the rut, but typically they live, within the same quarter mile to a half a mile their whole lives. And when the rut comes, if there's does in the area, he's probably just going to stay there. He might run a doe around, a mile out, but he'll circle back. Where mule deer, man, I've watched mule deer go miles and miles and miles. So a lot of the places that I hunt mule deer, you won't find, if you go there now in November, your eyes will bleed, you'll glass so much you won't see a single buck out there, but you'll find does. You'll find does everywhere. You might find, a little forky horn buck here and there, but you won't find any of those big bucks. But I guarantee you, come December 26th, those big boys will be in there. They come from miles away for wherever there is that their summer range is, and they come into where these does are. And I've seen them, come and check does and not find any and go, I've watched them walk miles out of sight too, So that's the biggest difference. I think for a guy's first time coming out to hunt Arizona, and don't let me discourage you, but I would say chasing mule deer is a lot easier, way easier. Some people call them dumb. They're not dumb by any means. They're a lot more curious, and they're not as skittish. I'm sure you've heard this before. The old mule deer look back, they'll get spooked, pop out 40, 50 yards, turn around and look back at you to see what it is, especially if you're not chasing them. They expect to be, once they're spooked by a predator, they're expecting to be chased. And if something doesn't start running after them, they're like, oh, what the hell was that scared me? Because it wasn't a mountain lion, because if it was a mountain lion, he'd be on my ass. But so there's a lot of behavior things about mule deer that make them a lot easier to kill, in my opinion, than a Coues deer, than whitetail in general, actually. I mean, because I've spot and stalked whitetail in the Midwest, and that's no easy task. Whitetail are just a lot more, basically just a lot more skittish in general. They don't have a lot of tolerance for human intrusion. And again, that's all dependent on where you're at too, because if you're hunting the suburbs and have a lot of deer and backyard deer, so to speak, they get used to smelling humans a lot, so you could get away with a little bit more. But out west, that's not usually the case.
All right, really quick, let's take a moment to hear a word from one of my partners. All right, y'all, so we know that there's countless box club offers out there catering to all different kinds of people and interests, from fishing to shaving, exercising, skincare, and whiskey. Just about anything you could think of. But none of them ever really appealed to me until I came across a newcomer to the arena, Bowhunter Box Club. Bowhunter Box Club is the only subscription box club service out there geared specifically for bow hunters. And I mean, who doesn't love getting a box packed full of awesome new bow hunting gear delivered directly to their doorstep every month? Now, here's the deal. Each month, they'll deliver a box filled with around $60 to $70 worth of awesome new products and gear for you to try out. Previous boxes have included gear such as broadheads, bino adapters, stands, gear hoists, and bow slings from companies like Vortex, Phone Scope, and Boning. This is quality gear that you've either been wanting to try out or really didn't know you needed. Now, you can choose from a bunch of different subscription plans that'll fit your budget. You can go month to month or save even more by selecting a long-term prepaid subscription. On top of that, for a small annual fee, you can join their VIP Pass-Through Club. Pass-Through Club members get exclusive access to buy discounted bow hunting gear that won't fit in the monthly box. What's even better is you're entered into monthly giveaways for incredible bow hunting gear like a Matthews bow or a Vortex spotting scope package. They're even giving away hunts. Now, the best part is you can get 10% off your first month of any subscription plan by using code COUNTRY10, and you can get $10 off the VIP Pass-Through Club membership by using code COUNTRYVIP. Get both of those codes and more discounts from awesome outdoor companies by visiting my partners page at livingcountryinthecity.com/partners. You talked a little bit about the tripod and wanting to have at least 15 power binoculars. Is there any other gear that you think might differ from just kind of the general hunting pack? Most guys will take into the backcountry with them. Is there any other gear that would be specific more towards hunting coues in Arizona?
Yeah. You know what? I tell this. I'm going to tell you what I tell clients that come to hunt with us. You want a good pair of boots. You want to have good camouflage with layers. Okay, because I've been hunting before in the desert down south, about 3,500, 4,000 feet of elevation, and it's 9 degrees in the morning, and by midday it's 70 degrees. You got this giant 60-degree swing, and even when it's still cold, the sun's pretty intense because it's very low, and you can feel it. I mean, so dress in layers, be able to have several camouflage layers so that when you take something off, you already got camouflage underneath you. And believe it or not, if you're coming in December, especially not so much in January, but in December, we get lots of rain. Have a rain jacket, whatever. But other than that, other than gear, I mean, optics, key. I'd say be able to shoot at least 60 yards. I mean, not to say that you don't get shots closer than that, but I would say the average buck taken here, spot and stalk, is 50 to 60 yards, if not more. I think it's getting bigger and bigger now because guys are getting sliders and dialing them up to 150 and taking shots. But, yeah, I mean, just be able to shoot, good optics, good boots, a butt pad. Believe it or not, that goes a long way because when you're comfortable glassing, you're not as impatient glassing and you can spend more time. Plus there's so many stickers and stuff. You get thorns in your ass and you're uncomfortable the whole day. So yeah, butt pad, tripod, and good optics. Definitely need a rangefinder, because the terrain's so broke up. Even if you're really good at being, judging distance and stuff, plus there are smaller deer. If you're used to seeing mule deer or you're used to seeing Midwest whitetails and you see this coyote running around out there with horns on his head, it's going to throw you off. So definitely have a good rangefinder with angle compensation. Really, gear-wise, it's all pretty much the same. I've had a lot of success with predator calls. I've had some success. I've actually never killed one rattling them in, but I've had success calling them in. That kind of stuff, I'd probably leave at home. I just rely on my spot and stalk skills. Oh, I'll tell you what's really, really neat thing to have is to have some kind of stalking shoes. the coverall type stuff that goes over your boots. I use the Sneak Tech Sneak Boot, but there's other ones out there. I think I use them because those I think are the best, and they work very, very well out here because the ground is super crunchy. Even when it rains, it's all decomposed granite, so it's very loud to walk on, and they can hear you coming from a long ways off. Especially the colder it is, the further sound travels. So keep that into consideration too.
That's definitely. I've been looking at what I need to kind of update from my elk hunt, and if I need to swap stuff out. And that was definitely one piece of gear I've been looking very seriously at buying. I'll check out those Sneak Techs for sure. I was also looking the Rimrock Stalkers. I've seen a few different brands of them. They're all, and I notice a lot of them are designed in different ways. Some are designed to replace your shoes. Some are designed to go over them. And
I like the ones that go over them. I feel like the ones that replace your shoes, two things. One, you're taking your boot off and you're letting a lot of stink into the air. Two, you have to sit down and take your boot off, put them away, pull out the other ones, put them on. It's just another step. Like, I think it takes long, and I mean, sometimes that's good. It slows you down, whatever. But me, I don't, especially during the rut. I mean, last year, this is a mule deer, but I literally stalked the same buck 4 different times, and 4 different times he got up, or his doe got up and moved, and he chased her off. Had nothing to do with me busting them or wind or anything like that, but that's what happens in the rut. They're here 1 minute, gone the next. So finding a bedded buck during the rut, unless his does are bedded below him or whatever, chances are he's not going to stay there very long. So that's something to keep in mind.
So are there any other really unique things or anything interesting, either not necessarily specific to Coues, but just generally about deer hunting in Arizona? Anything that any final things that you think I should know before I come out in December and January?
I mean, no. Because people will tell you, oh, this unit's not as good as that unit. That's not as good. I say there's good deer in every unit. And if you look for those items that we talked about a little earlier, cover, food, water, and especially if you got real broken up country next to it that a deer can hide in and thrive in, you're going to find deer. If you find those pieces of the puzzle together, you'll be able to find deer. Trust your instincts. If you feel like it's an area that's going to have deer in it, probably does. Let your eyes do the walking for you. I try to utilize my vehicle as much as possible to get from point A to point B. That way, when it's time for me to make a stalk, I have all the gas in the tank I need to, so to speak, to make it get up there fast enough. You're not going to have a whole lot of competition with people. There's some spots that get pretty heavily hunted. Those are usually the ones that are closer to town. So if you stay away from town, you should be all right. You might see a couple guys here and there, but there's plenty of public ground here. It's not like other states. I mean, we're like 80-something% public land, so there's enough to go around for everybody. I mean, there's not a whole lot I could tell you that's gonna, unless I was out there with you, and showing you. It's kind of hard to say because everything else is just a generalization.
Yeah.
It's very specific to where you're going. I wish there was a magic bullet, a silver bullet, whatever, that I can give you. There are a couple things I might share with you after we shut the recorder off. I just don't want a bunch of people out there trying it. Sorry, guys. It's because if you can't do it right, you're going to mess it up for the rest of us. But other than that, it's really just glass. Find a buck, make sure you had the wind right, get up there fast enough, but make your end approach super slow. Take your time, execute the shot, and you'll go home with the deer.
Then the hard work starts.
Yeah, not too hard with a Coues. You can pack them out whole.
I was gonna say, yeah, the Coues aren't so bad.
That's my thing. That's my thing. I don't know if you see any of my photos out there of me packing out. I don't even gut them anymore. I take them whole down to the truck, and then when I get them down to the truck, it's nice and comfortable. I quarter them up and do my thing down there.
I was gonna say, yeah, so, that's definitely a lot nicer about the small deer. Throw them over a shoulder and.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd throw them over my shoulder because you don't have a whole lot of ticks over here, but ticks, fleas, whatever.
Yeah.
That's just getting bloody, but decent frame pack. Strap them right there with some ratchet straps. Fold them up into a. Yeah. Shit.
I can't remember who it was, but I remember somebody made a post. I think they had gutted it first, but I'm pretty sure it was a Coues buck.
Mm-hmm.
But they took the buck and they basically took the bottom legs, put it around their waist and zip tied them together, and then the front legs up over their shoulders and around there and zip tied them together and just carried the whole deer as a backpack that way.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, I ended up bloody as hell, but it worked.
Yeah. See, if I don't have to get crap all over me, I like to be as clean and comfortable as I possibly can. Kind of a self-proclaimed prima donna that way, but
I think it was one of those things where they were just doing it to kind of make a point. I don't think that was meant to be an actual much of a tactic, to say the least. But I think it was just kind of to make
it's a cool Instagram photo.
Exactly, like a point, oh look, the deer's small. It's a cool Instagram photo. Okay, I will never do this again.
No, yeah, just fold them up like a suitcase and throw them on a frame pack and pack them off. Pretty simple.
There you go. So as we're winding down, say, as I said earlier, this podcast, it's really kind of geared towards new hunters, folks that just may not have the same experience or resources in the outdoors as someone that lives, in Arizona or in Montana or,
Mm-hmm.
any of these places. Say you get a message from someone, they say, hey, John, I'm from Los Angeles. I want to get started hunting. I've been shooting my bow. I've got some of the gear, but I just don't even know where to start. I just feel super intimidated by doing this. What kind of encouragement or words of wisdom would you give to that person?
Well, words of encouragement. I mean, we all start somewhere. I was that same person as you are, 20 some odd years ago, didn't know what to do, who to turn to. I always tell them success is in the details, and spend time on the details and absorb as much knowledge as possible. Listen to podcasts like this, stuff like that. Just really just soak in everything that you possibly can, so that, like I said earlier, you can learn from other people's mistakes. So when you're out there and you're getting your new experiences and experiencing these things for the first time, hey, I heard John Stallone say on the podcast that, if a buck is doing this or that, I know what he's going to do. He's going to get ready to bed down right now. Or I find a bedded deer and it's 11 o'clock and the sun's starting to hit him in the face. Oh, he's going to get up right now and switch spots and move to another spot. I remember hearing that. And you're just going to be much better and that far ahead of the curve, because had somebody told me that 20 years ago, I could tell you I would have saved a lot of boot leather, because I've been on many stalks and, that buck is bedded. I run up the mountain and get over there and that buck's not there anymore because he got up. When I get back and my buddy's like, oh yeah, I watched him get up and walk over and go bed down over here. This is, before we used radios and whatnot. But yeah, it's learning as much as you can, and don't be intimidated. Take things slow. Start out with day hunts. Go on an outfitted hunt. Nowadays, there's so much stigma out there about using guides. It drives me freaking insane. I'm not going to get on my high horse right now and get on a whole tirade, but it really bothers me that there's a lot of hunters out there that give other hunters for using a guide. And I'm like, it's stupid. Your learning curve goes from here, it's like a straight line. There's no curve. You have somebody that knows what they're doing, knows that area, knows the species, and you're learning. It's like paying somebody to take you on a hands-on, clinic, so to speak. I think if you can afford it, of course, there's always a cost factor, but save up the money, whatever. Instead of saving up the money to buy 10 Sika suits. Sika is one of my sponsors. I'm sorry, but buy one or two and then start saving the money to go on a guided hunt. That way, you go on a guided hunt, you build some confidence. Maybe you get one, maybe you don't, but you'll have a lot of experience, a lot more useful experience that you can now, when you go try it on your own, it'd be a lot easier for you to apply those things. So I think I tell new hunters that all the time. Go on a guided hunt. I think guided hunts are like tailor built for a guy that has the desire, has the drive, but hasn't had a father teaching him or whatever for as long as he's been alive, especially somebody who's never hunted before, ever, or had anybody hunting or any hunting influences in his life or her life. I think those are a great way to get into it, put both pant legs on at the same time, so to speak.
So if people wanted to find you online, reach out, ask questions, check out what you got going on, where's the best place to hunt you down? Pun intended.
Honestly, I'm on all this social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you just search John Stallone. But if you go to my blog, johnstallone.me, there's also a johnstallone.com, which is a different page. I need to do something about that. But johnstallone.me is my blog. You can subscribe there, and then you'll get my podcast, interviews with the hunting masters. You'll get my articles, blog posts, my Instagram feeds there. Facebook's not there, but who cares about Facebook anymore? Just joking. It's a fad. It's going away. Just kidding. No, but seriously, yeah, that's probably the best place. johnstallone.me.
Well, I'll definitely put those up on the show notes page. Once again, that's going to be livingcountryinthecity.com/45. Y'all can find links to all John's stuff up on there. Once again, thank you so much for hopping on the show with me today, John. Really excited to have you on, and hope you're filling those tags for the rest of the season.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears, because I've already had to cancel 3 hunts this year, so I'd like to fill the rest of the tags that I have. So I'm excited about them. I'm going to be leaving here for South Dakota here pretty soon, and then when I get back, I'm going to start focusing on Arizona deer. So
there we go. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Have a good one.
All right, y'all, that'll do it for episode 45 of Living Country in the City. Make sure y'all go give John a follow on social. Check out Days of the Wild TV and also interviews with the hunting masters. You won't regret any of it. John's an awesome guy. Really gets it done. As always, y'all can find those links on our show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/45. So until next time, keep it country, y'all.
Thank y'all for listening to Living Country in the City. Get show notes and check out the blog, product reviews, events, and more at livingcountryinthecity.com.